Have you ever wondered about the meat you eat? Has it ever occurred to you that the meat you eat might not be animal flesh? These are the questions that Robert Pickton asked Canadians. Robert William Pickton was born on October 24, 1949, in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, Canada. The Pickton family lived on a hog farm outside of town. The family was very successful in farming and was well known in their community. Robert was the middle child in the family. He grew up with his older brother David and sister Linda. The Pickton family's farm life shaped the children's daily lives. Robert spent much of his childhood helping with farm chores. The Pickton brothers were accustomed to working in the family business from an early age. Caring for and feeding the animals and organizing the farm were part of their daily routine. Robert's mother, Louise Pickton, was a very disciplined and strict woman when it came to farm work. She raised her children under strict discipline and closely monitored their contribution to the farm work. Their father, Leonard Pickton, played a more passive role, and the mother's authority was much more evident in the family. Robert Pickton's childhood was not limited to farm work. He attended school in Port Coquitlam. However, his grades were below average. He was known by his classmates as a shy and timid boy. He had poor social skills, and this would become more apparent in the years to come. The reason for this, of course, was his mother's behavior. She made the children work long hours on the farm, including school days. This meant that they often stank. During his childhood, Robert had so much fun with pigs that they became his life. It is said that he even hid among the pig carcasses to escape from someone. Some of the events of Robert's childhood had a profound effect on his psychological development. His relationship with his brother David was very complicated. His older brother was often overbearing and coercive with Robert. This situation deeply damaged Robert's self-confidence. It caused him to become introverted. Some traumatic events that Robert Pickton experienced during his childhood caused his character to be reshaped. One of these events was an accident when he was young. Robert was severely injured while playing on the farm. This accident affected both his physical and emotional health. In addition, the slaughter of a calf he had raised as a child by his parents had a profound effect on him, and he developed a sense of distrust of family as well as a bond with animals. Another important event was the early departure of Robert's sister Linda. Linda left the farm life and began living in the city. Linda could not get out of the swamp from which she had escaped. Robert Pickton's childhood years greatly influenced his later behavior and personality. Growing up in a disciplined but unloving family environment led him to become an emotionally isolated individual. The difficulties he experienced in school and in his social environment damaged his self-confidence and caused him to become withdrawn. One of the reasons he was not liked by the girls at school was that he constantly smelled of dung, dead animals, and dirt. He never wore clean clothes. He decided to drop out of school because he was very difficult because of these situations. Robert Pickton's teenage years were more complex and difficult than his childhood. The family farm remained the center of his life, but some of the events and changes he experienced during his adolescence had a profound effect on his personality development and future behavior. On October 16, 1967, David Pickton began driving his father's red truck shortly after getting his driver's license. A major turning point came that day when David hit a 14-year-old boy walking on the side of the road. The boy's name was Tim Barrett. David ran home in a panic to tell his mother what had happened. Louise Pickton returned with her son to find Barrett injured but still alive. Louise didn't want to turn her son over to the law. She wanted to get him out. After arriving at the scene, she dug a hole and buried the 14-year-old boy alive. She dug a shallow grave. That's why Tim Barrett's lifeless body was found by the teams the next day. The autopsy revealed that the boy had drowned. Although his injuries from the collision were severe, they were not fatal. Robert was deeply affected by the incident. He realized more clearly the breakdown in the family. He left the farm and went to work as a butcher. But the farm was his destiny. He would return here. In 1978, Robert's father, Leonard, died at the age of 91. That same year, a fire destroyed 600 pigs. In 1979, Mother Louise Pickton died at the age of 67. Despite the difficult year, the farm was worth about $1 million and was to be divided among the children. Each received $90,000 from their mother's will. Robert had to run the farm for another 10 years to get his money. That would give him $20,000 more than his brothers. Robert ran a slaughterhouse and butcher shop. After this incident, he returned to the farm and began running it with David. Robert Pickton began working full-time on the family farm in Port Coquitlam in the late 1970s and early 1980s. After that time, people started disappearing in Vancouver. Because they were sex workers, the police did not investigate the cases properly. The area was known for its high rates of poverty and crime. The disappearances of women went unnoticed for a long time and were not taken seriously enough by the police. Between 1978 and 2001, at least 65 women disappeared in the area. However, the number of disappearances had reached an unbelievable level. Meanwhile, business on the ranch was booming and the Pickton brothers were making good money. Robert often brought women to the ranch and tricked them. He and his brother even set up a non-profit charity to do this. In 1996, the Pickton brothers founded a charity called the Piggy Palace Good Times Society. The purpose of this organization was to organize events for various social groups. In reality, however, these events were largely sex parties and illegal activities. These parties often attracted sex workers and drug addicts from Vancouver's downtown Eastside. The ranch quickly became a center for this type of activity. Biker gangs were among the groups that attended these parties. Unbeknownst to everyone, Robert was killing the women who came to the parties and feeding them to his pigs. Since he had been a butcher before the farm, he still sold meat. The cruelest part was selling the meat of the people he killed along with the pork. He developed a tactic to dispose of the bodies in this way. In 1997, one woman finally managed to escape his grasp. On March 26, 1997, a woman Pickton brought to his farm resisted his attempt to handcuff her. Using a kitchen knife, the woman stabbed Pickton and managed to escape. Running at high speed, the woman stopped a passing car for help and was taken to hospital. Pickton, who was treated at the same hospital, was found to have a key in his pocket that matched the woman's handcuffs. Pickton was arrested on charges of attempted murder, assault with a weapon, and forcible confinement. The charges were dropped because the woman was a drug addict and not considered a credible witness. However, he was still charged with attempted murder. He was released on $2,000 bail before the trial began. In addition to Robert, David was also involved in some crimes. He had been arrested and released on bail in the early 1990s. So the family was very dangerous. After this incident in 1997, they were on the radar of the police. There were already complaints about illegal parties being organized at the farm, but the police could not intervene within the legal system. Things had to get out of hand for the police to conduct a search here. In fact, the police had already taken action against people who had gone missing. In 1987, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, RCMP, set up a special team to investigate the disappearances of sex workers in the area. However, this team was disbanded in 1989 after making limited progress. In the late 1990s, as the number of missing women increased, community members and families began to put more pressure on the police. The Vancouver Police Department was slow to respond to these disappearances, and many families complained of police apathy. Targeting sex workers and marginalized groups was considered a low priority by the police. In 1999, a farm worker, Bill Hiscox, contacted police to report that he had seen women's clothing, bags, and identification at the Pickton farm. This information came after a friend told him he had seen Pickton hang a woman's body on the farm. However, the police were unable to conduct a thorough search of the farm because the investigation into these allegations failed to produce any concrete evidence. It is also very interesting that the authorities did nothing despite so many reports. On February 6, 2002, police obtained a search warrant after receiving a tip that illegal weapons had been found at the Pickton farm. During this search of the farm, personal effects belonging to the missing women were found. These findings led to a further search of the farm by the police. With a second search warrant, excavations at the farm yielded numerous human remains and DNA samples. Pickton was charged with the murders of Serena Abostway and Mona Wilson and arrested on February 22, 2002. In the months that followed, the remains of more women would be uncovered and the charges would escalate. The exhumation process became one of the largest criminal investigations in Canadian history. Extensive excavation and forensic analysis of the farm yielded the remains and personal effects of many of the missing women. Forensic scientists used heavy equipment and soil sifting to find human remains. The process cost Canada 17 million Canadian dollars. Excavations continued until 2003, and the horrific picture continued to grow. Remains were found and sent to forensic scientists for DNA testing. By May 26, 2005, the death toll had risen to 27. Each time the teams officially excavated, they found another body. In 2004, the authorities were forced to reveal the terrible truth. They announced that a serial killer named Robert Pickton may have been selling human meat mixed with pork to the public. Naturally, this caused great fear among the public. Later, they also announced that he may have just fed the lifeless bodies to pigs. Either way, it was very cruel. The trial of Robert Pickton was one of the largest and most complex serial murder trials in Canadian history. The trial began on January 22, 2007 in the Supreme Court of British Columbia. Pickton was charged with a total of 27 counts of first-degree murder, but these charges were divided into two groups to make the trial more manageable. The first group included 6 murders, and the second group included the remaining 21 murders. The case was of great importance to the community and the families of the missing women, especially in Vancouver's downtown Eastside. The Crown built its case on human remains and DNA evidence found on Pickton's farm. The victims' clothing, personal effects, and other evidence were recovered from extensive excavations on Pickton's farm. The prosecution alleged that Pickton killed his victims in a variety of ways, dismembered the bodies and fed them to pigs on the farm, and in some cases ground and sold the human flesh. These allegations influenced the course of the trial. Defense lawyers argued that their client did not commit the murders, questioning Pickton's mental state and the reliability of some of the evidence. The defense argued that Pickton was mentally unstable and that his confessions were made under duress. The serial killer had said during interrogations that the number was 65, not 27. The exclusion of some key evidence during the trial was also an important part of the defense case. In particular, arguments over the credibility of certain witnesses and the validity of Pickton's confessions were critical points in the trial. The trial lasted throughout 2007. The prosecution called 98 witnesses to the stand to detail Pickton's crimes. Witnesses included people who claimed to have seen Pickton's victims, farm workers, and forensic experts. The evidence and testimony presented during the trial played a major role in Pickton's conviction. On December 9, 2007, the jury found Pickton guilty of 6 counts of second-degree murder. This meant that Pickton was sentenced to life in prison without parole for a minimum of 25 years. The remaining 21 murder charges were dropped because Pickton had already received the maximum sentence. Robert Pickton's case has sparked widespread debate in Canada about the functioning of the justice system and the effectiveness of police investigations. In particular, the families of the disappeared women and the general public criticized police negligence and low priority assessments. The outcome of the case has raised awareness of the issue of missing and murdered women in Canada and the need for measures to prevent such incidents from happening again. The case also highlighted the importance of technological and methodological advances in forensic and criminal investigations. Pickton's crimes and the process of uncovering them are remembered as one of the most complex and remarkable cases in criminal history. Robert Pickton is currently incarcerated at the maximum security Port Cartier Penitentiary in Quebec. However, he was recently attacked in prison by another inmate and is currently hospitalized with life-threatening injuries. In May 2024, Pickton was severely assaulted by another inmate at Port Cartier Penitentiary. Severely wounded in the head as a result of the attack, the 74-year-old Pickton was taken by helicopter to a Quebec City hospital and placed in intensive care. While Pickton's condition remains serious, doctors plan to wake him from a coma, but it is still unclear whether his condition will stabilize. Pickton will be eligible for parole in 2024. However, the families of the victims and many public officials argue that this application should not be granted. Pickton's case is known as one of the largest serial murders in Canadian history and has had a major impact on society. It is unlikely that his parole application will be accepted, but this does not prevent Pickton from exercising his legal rights. However, Pickton died in hospital. As a result, Robert Pickton did not survive the coma and said goodbye to the world.